Hi, welcome back. So this is video number 3 in our Intro to Maya 2022 series. And what we're going to talk about in this one is creating some basic materials for our ant in order to add color to the model. We already have our 3D model from our previous video. So this one we're going to move forward. And in the following videos, we will take a look at UVs. We'll create some UVs. And in the last video, we'll make some more advanced textures for our scene. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here we are with our Maya open. So Maya 2022 is open, and we're going to go ahead and set our project first. So we're going to go up to File, and we're going to go down, and we're going to set Project. Now, if you've already, if you haven't opened any other projects since then, it'll probably already be set to the project. But it's a good habit to start to just go ahead and set the project. It only takes a second. You just go up to File, Set Project, and then you pick the project you're working on. In this case, it's this ant class. We can go ahead and set it. And then I'm going to go back to File. And then I'm going to go ahead and open my scene. So right here at the top, Open Scene. And when we do that, because we've got it set, it's going to go straight into our Project Scenes folder. And it's going to open up or present whatever projects we have in here, whatever scenes. In this case, we only have one. If we have multiple scenes that would fall under this project, they would also be listed here. Let's go ahead and open that up. It's going to ask if I want to save the changes to this blank. I'm going to say no. You don't want to keep saving blank ones. All right, and here is the ant model that we made. And right off the bat, one of the things I wanted to do, though, was kind of make an adjustment to the head of the ant. I'm just not really happy with it. We're going to do just a real quick model modification. We're going to try to kind of give it a little bit more distinct area right here. As you can see, this is flat and it kind of points up. And this should probably point down just a little bit. So, and also I want to give it kind of a split here in the middle. Mostly in the last video, what we looked at doing was using vertices. So in this one, I also wanted to just show you can model using edges as well. So I'm going to right click on with that selected. I'm going to choose edge, and down here at the very end, I'm kind of zoom in a little bit. I'm going to find my center one, and I'm going to click on it. Now, one of the things about edges is if you can double click on one. So if I double click on this one right here, it will select a whole row. And if this hadn't been a sphere, if this was a box or something like that, or a cube, it would have gone all the way around. But in this case, what it did is it just went from one end of the sphere to the other vertice on the other end of the sphere. And that's what we want to do. We want to go ahead and get all that selected, because what I'm going to do, just real quick, is hit W, and I'm going to just push that down a little bit, kind of create this ridge kind of a little bit. I don't want to get too crazy. And I can see down here in the end that it's kind of twisting that. I don't want to do that either, so I'm going to Control Z that, and I'm going to hold down the Control button, and I'm going to deselect that very end right there. And then let's try pushing this down a little bit. A little bit further here. So give it a little bit of a ridge there, and I'm going to deselect this one. Pull that down a little bit. Deselect that one, and just a little bit more. And slowly getting there. I think I'm going to go ahead and deselect these here completely. See what this looks like. Pull it down. I think that's going to be okay. It gives some definition. It doesn't have that complete rounded section there. And the other thing I wanted to do was see if I could do something with this section here, so it kind of centers everything out, brings it down a little bit, because we've got more of a point there. So I'm going to go ahead and do a marquee select of those edges there, and And no, I'm not really wanting to do that. Let's go ahead and go back to edge. Double click on this edge right here. Select that circle there. Push this down just a little bit. Nope, it's not going to do it the way I want to. I'm going to hold the shift and do this center one here as well. And I may have to go back into vertices. Let's see here. We'll just do the vertices. Do a marquee select of all the vertices. And push this down a little bit more like this. Do a marquee select here. Bring that down a little bit more. Alright, and now what I want to do is I'm going to select these right here. So I'm going to go back to edge. And select the ones on either side of this center point here. Just kind of pull this up a little bit. Okay. And maybe get this one as well. Again, we're not shooting for exact replication, just something real similar. And I also want to maybe widen this beak out a little bit. Right now it's very pointed. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to go on the one on the opposite side. I'm going to hold the shift button and double click. And that's not going to do it the way I want to, so we're going to have to do these individually. Here and here. I'm going to hit R on the keyboard, and I think I'm going to widen this out a little bit. And then I'm going to deselect these two. Widen that out a little bit more. Deselect these. Okay, so good enough, similar to kind of get the feel that it is a bug. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and take a look at applying materials to our ant. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and right click and hold. I'm going to go to object mode. Hit Q to quit that because I don't need that tool anymore. And what I want to do is I want to do a marquee select of, and actually the marquee select's not going to work. So over here on the left hand side where I have the outliner, I'm just going to select the ant and highlight the entire ant. Okay, with it selected, and let's talk a little bit about materials. So the material that's currently assigned to the ant is called a Lambert, and that's Lambert number 1 because we haven't actually done anything with this material yet. And Lambert number 1 is your basic Lambert that's applied to everything that you create in your scene. So if I were to create another cube or a sphere or something like that, it will have Lambert 1 material assigned to it. You never want to apply anything, any texture, any colors, anything. You never want to modify Lambert number 1 because if you modify Lambert number 1, everything you create in your scene from there on out is going to have that modification applied to it. So you always want to apply a second material and create a second material that is going to be your material that you're going to work with and you're going to modify and change. Lambert number 1, you don't mess with it, all right? Typically. Now there may be some rare occasions where you will, but not very often, if ever, okay? So, and what I did is this is a hyper shader. I pulled that up right here. That's this little circle right here. We'll work with that in just a minute. But what we're going to do is in this scene, we're going to right click and hold, and we're going to go down to assign new material. And when you right click and hold and go to assign new material, this menu will pop up. And we want to use an Arnold, and we're going to go down and we're going to use what's called an AI standard surface right here. I'm going to select that, And when we select it, it has applied a new material to our entire ant. Now, unfortunately, the menu didn't pop over here under our attribute editor like I would hoped it would. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to go find our material. So I'm going to click on the head of it because every piece of this ant has that same material assigned to it. You can see that it's kind of turned this darker gray than the rest of the surface area behind it. And over here, when I clicked on it, it brings up all the attributes that are assigned to that head of the ant, to include the material that is actually the material assigned to the entire ant. So if I make any modifications to this material, it's going to change the material on the entire ant. And that's what we're going to want to do. So right up here where it says AI standard surface, we're going to rename this. And I'm going to use M at the beginning for material, underscore, and then I am going to call this ant body, okay? And give it that name. Now the other thing I want to do is with the ant body, I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to Control C for copy. And then I want to also change the output node name so that I know what that output node goes to. And that here are your input and your output nodes to this material. And we'll talk about those a little bit more when we open up the Hypershade. So I'm going to click on that button right there, and that's going to open up the input node. And you can see it's named this right here. I'm going to rename this. We hit Control V, and now it has M ant body. It should have a 1 after it, but I think I probably played around with this a little bit before, so I've already named it. It automatically gives a number after it, because we can only have one of this, and then it'll add numbers after that. Okay, so that way it keeps it together. I know that this is the output node that goes with this is the output node that goes with that material. All right, so we did that. Now the next thing I want to do is, even though I've already given the material to the eyes the same one, I know I want the material for the eyes to be different. So I'm going to select one of the eyes, and I can come over here to the head, hit the down arrow, and select it this way as well. And I'm going to assign a different material to it. So I'm going to right click and hold again, go down to Assign New Material, select Arnold, and I also want an AI standard surface for this. And I'm going to rename this M underscore, and I'm going to just call this eyes, because both eyes are going to be the same color, and I'm going to spell eyes correctly. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to Control C, copy it. Now, this material opened up in the attribute editor. So right here is the output node for this material. It's already here, so that's easy to do. If you don't have it, again, you can click the output node button there. I'm going to select it, Control V, so Control V to paste it, and now I have those named correctly. Okay, so this other eye though still has the original body assigned to it. So with it selected, and I can select it over here as well, I can right click and hold, and I can go down to Assign Existing Material to anything that I want to have the same material that I've already created. In this case I have. It's this M eyes right here. So I'm going to select it, and now I've assigned that material I created for this one to the right eye, or the left eye rather. Okay? And there's one other thing I want to apply a material to, and that's the ground piece right here, because we are going to actually do something with the ground in the future. So I'm going to select it, I'm going to right click, I'm going to go Assign New Material, Arnold, AI Standard Surface, select on the standard surface up here, make sure you have that tab up, and I'm going to call this M underscore, I'm just going to call it ground. It may be table or whatever, but it's right now we're treating it as a ground surface. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy it. And if yours doesn't, for some reason mine came up with 1 after it, again, I probably played around with it and I created a ground node before. Even though I deleted it, it'll still adjust your numbers. So you may have just M underscore ground, and that's fine, and then M underscore ground 1. So now we've got 3 materials created, and we're going to take a look at how to modify those. And we can do that right here in this same screen that we have open, right here where it says base color. And there's all the same tools over here in the attribute editor, all of the same assets, or attributes rather, that's the right word. So all the attributes for this material are here, and we can adjust them here just the same, and it's kind of quicker and easier. But I want to show you the hypershade. So I'm going to click on the hypershade, and with the hypershade selected, we have access to all of our materials here, okay? And we have a tab up along the top, and this tab, just like some of the others, we have an import option. We can edit, so we can do deleting. We have a view. We can change our viewport, add some things, remove things. Let's create. I use create quite a bit when we come in here to create some of our Arnold light and a sky dome. We'll get to that a little bit later. Again, tabs, graph, a bunch of other options up in here that we're not going to get into right now. This, some quick access buttons here. You can change the way some things look in your screen using it, and etc. Down here we have a bunch of tabs. These are our materials tabs right here. If we had any textures, that would be in here. Any utilities. We have a default render layer in here. No lights added that we have added. We do have some cameras that we have in here, and we have our image plane. So you can see that these different tabs will, and yeah, this is why I got into trouble. I didn't take these nodes out. So we should only have representative of your actual ant body, 1, 2, ground 1, 2, etc. Any bake sets, projects. So a lot of different things you can get in here, but we're mostly just going to, this time around, work with materials. Okay, so we'll just put it back on the material tab. Down here we have our create. This is where we can create nodes that are going to go into our work area right here, and that's what this is right here. This is an untitled work area. We can close it. We can add more, so we can have multiple materials that we're working with down here. These little tabs, again, here's your input node, here's your output node, and this one brings up both input and output. This will clear your graph. This is, you can add selected nodes, you can remove nodes, you can do a lot of different things with these up in here. But that's for a lot more advanced stuff that we're going to be working on. This is your material viewer, and this is actually the shader ball. Up here, you can tell it which hardware you want to use for the rendering, to get an idea of what it's going to look like. You can choose a shader ball, cloth, teapot. You can change whatever form this is going to look like. And then you can also change the coloring for it. So exterior, interior type of color, neutral, things like that. Some additional buttons we're not going to get into right now. And then this is your property editor. And if you remember, when we looked at that material that was over here, bring it back again since I clicked off of it. If I click back on the ant body, you see that all of these here are the same ones that we're going to see down here. So you could make these adjustments here. And since I have the ant body and the eyes, since I selected the head, both of those materials that apply to that surface area are listed down here. And the tab for the ant body is the one that's up right now, and those are the eyes. But we're going to work a little bit differently. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a material, and in this case the ant body, and I'm going to click on it. And when I do that, you can see it changes over here. And hovering over it, I'm going to use my middle mouse button, click and hold, and drag it down here. And here is the ant body. Select it, so if you click on it and then hit the output node right here, you'll see that it has this output node that we had renamed back in the main screen, and it has that name right here, ant body. Okay. So the way to move around in this screen is you hold your middle mouse button, and you can move it, pan it up and down, and then middle mouse button, zoom in, zoom out. All right. So kind of easy to do that. So we're not going to do anything really fancy right now. We're just going to select the ant body material, and then over here make sure it says ant body. And up here at the top where it says base, what we're going to do is I'm going to slide this over so you can see what I'm doing to the ant at the same time. Right here where it says color, I'm going to select color, and I'm going to make my ant red. So I'm going to select the red. And then down here in this little node, or if you have some input numbers, so sometimes when you're working on a project, you will be given some RGB numbers, HSV numbers to be able to make some adjustments that you can just plug right in. I lost it. You can also change this to RGB 0 to 1, so this is a decimal system, or RGB 0 to 255, which you might find often in paint numbers and things like that. Okay, so if I click on it, you'll see that it changes to RGB here. All right. Here I can grab and start to click in here, and I can move around and adjust the shade level of my red. And if we switch it to Arnold, let's see if it's going to actually do it. There we go. So we're going to end up using an Arnold Renderer. So if you change this tab to Arnold, you'll see that it's going to show you kind of what it will look like if we render it in Arnold. Okay. And I kind of got this kind of a brighter red. I'm going to leave it that right now. And then we're going to talk about some of the other things that are here in the coloring. So if we take a look at the node here, so the Arnold shader ball, I'm going to scroll down, diffuse roughness and metalness. So we can play with the metalness. If I move this to the right, it's going to give this a metallic appearance. And here in my screen, it kind of turns the ant black. And that's okay because it's actually going to look like this, but it is black in appearance because it has to render using the Arnold rendering shader. Or Arnold Renderer, rather. All right, so I'm going to put that back there. Now down here under specular, we can change our roughness. So I can make this surface so that it doesn't reflect as much. All right. IOR is not going to really affect too much. Well, I guess it kind of does. It has to do with the way that the surface area reflects light and reflects the world around it. Okay. And I'll put that back to, it was around 1.5, good enough. Okay, transmission. So transmission will change the appearance. So basically right now it's solid, opaque. And if I grab it and start to move this to the right, it's going to start making it so that it looks more like glass. And you can kind of see that here. You see that happening with my ant down there. And I can also change the color that is transmitted. So if I wanted to say, make it so that it has a bluish transmission, even though our ant is red and you can still see the reddish in it, the light transmission from the surface area will change to that. If you really wanted to bring home the red, you can change it to red, and it gives it more of a kind of a candy glass look appearance to the surface. All right, so I'm going to put that back to white and change this back down. Okay, subsurface is the way that the light or the color comes up through the subsurface. So below, when you look at paint, there's kind of a depth to it, right? When you look at coloring, there are the way the light reflects back through, and down deep underneath the upper surface level, you can have a transmission that comes from your subsurface. And if we run this all the way up, you can see that it really changes the effect of the color of my ant and the surface area that's being put out, because this is white. Even though the main surface area on top is red, it's going to be overpowered by this. And we can also adjust this color. And you can kind of see how red affects through it. It actually has a subsurface color and a radius color, so we can adjust those. We can also adjust the weight down so that the actual color level at the top has more weight over the top of the subsurface, so it's not overpowered. And we can see that if we put this back to like white. All right, so you kind of get a feel for what that does. Let's see your coat. We'll be messing around with coat when we get in transition, in with textures. There we go. That's what I want to say. All right, so coat. Play around with the way this works. It's hard to really tell much of a difference here, but with the coat, we can adjust our roughness in it as well. So this is more of a surface level. roughness, but down deep it still kind of has a glossy feel to it. We also have the similar settings as we do with the base color at the very top. So think of a coat as being the outer level, and there's still a subsurface level, so we can adjust this. Okay, sheen, same thing. Play around. Let me see, did I put this back? And let me put this back. There we go. All right, so sheen. So when light kind of bounces off of a surface, you get this kind of like a glow feeling to it, and that kind of surface level reflection, I guess, a sheen to it. It kind of has a shininess to it. We can change that color, play around with kind of what the surface level has going on top of it, and you can kind of see how that affects up here and down here in the shadows. You get to see that there's just kind of this it's almost like kind of dust, I guess, sitting on top of it, but it's more visible, more reflective, but you can also adjust the roughness on it so that it's not rough at all. It has really kind of a glow to it, or you can make it really rough and you can see more of the surface area, so it's not reflecting the light as much, and you see more of the surface area with this material on it. Okay, so now I'm actually gonna jump over to the eyes real quick. So let's go ahead, and before I get on to emissions, and I'm not gonna go through all of these. I'm gonna stop at emissions. So right here in our work area, I'm gonna select this work area. I'm gonna hit this little button right here. This is to clear the work area, so it gets rid of everything. I'm gonna come up here to my eyes. I'm gonna select the eyes, drop them down in here, and just click on it. Make sure we have the eyes here. And for the base color on the eyes, I'm gonna go back all the way to the top, and I'm gonna make them black. Okay. So now we see we have these eyes. The roughness is kind of high up. We can pull the roughness down and make them more reflective. I think make it just a little bit more rough. But I'm going to go down here to emission, and the eye color is black. But if I go to emission, think of this as a light that kind of glows out of a surface, sort of like a light bulb glow, but without giving a lot of light. Okay, like a glow-in-the-dark type of material. Okay, so I'm going to select the color here for emissions. I'm going to select yellow, and nothing's really happened yet, but when I start to turn the weight up, you see that the eyes start to kind of glow. It has this yellow kind of glow to it. You can see that here in the material, in the little shader ball. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to minimize this. Actually, before I minimize it, let me pull that back up. Let me see, where'd it go? It should be, it's down here underneath my little toolbar. You can't see it, but down here in the bottom, underneath the toolbar, it should have parked that down here, but it did not. It actually put it on my other window. So there should be a little minimize and expand little button down there, and it put it on my other window, so you can't see that. What I want to do before I actually before I move this out of the way is we are going to go ahead up here to create. We're going to come down here to Arnold Light, and we're going to create an AI sky dome from right here. Okay. And now what we should have is we should have this sky dome that's been created back here. Okay. And now I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the sky dome as we start to do this as well. But the sky dome is a light source, okay? And in order to render anything, you need a light source. It doesn't have to be a sky dome. You can bring in lights into your scene here, and if I click on create, and down here where it says lights, there's all these lights here. These are regular Maya lights, and if you use these, you're going to have to turn their intensity or their exposure up really high in order for it to work with Arnold. But if we use Arnold lights, so if you click on the Arnold tab and you go here, you have a bunch of Arnold lights right here, and then back in this as well. Another way to get to it is create, and remember, you go down to Arnold light, you have some lights here as well. Okay, but we're not going to use any of those lights. We're not creating any lights in there right now. We're just going to use the sky dome. And now with the sky dome in the scene and with my ant here, I'm going to go ahead and right here in the center underneath the tab for Arnold should have a little play button. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to pop up with a render, and everything's really kind of whitewashed right now. All right, the ground is white and the background is bright white. Okay, and that's what you're going to get from an AI sky dome, but we can do other things with sky domes, and we can apply textures to them and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and close this real quick. I'm going to click on the sky dome and I'm going to delete it. We have another type of sky dome in Arnold. So this was kind of what that was. This is an AI sky dome right here. And this is another type of a sky dome with a physical sky in it. So I'm going to click on that. And you see now, instead of being gray, the background's all black. And if I hit that play button, what we end up with is kind of this physical sky off in the distance. And for this this time around, this first render, this is what we're going to work with. We're going to keep it here. And I'm going to move over just a little bit so I can see my sky dome. I'm going to click on it back here in the background. And right here where it says intensity, I want to show you how this emission works. So I'm going to turn my light intensity down until it goes really, really kind of dim. And you can see that the eyes, if I go all the way down, are glowing. That's kind of what emission will do for you, and you can pick different colors for it, of course. And I can choose to, let's go ahead and pull that back up real quick. I can, with the eyes, I'll go ahead and select the eyes, the eye material. Got everything in my way. Nice. Okay, select the eyes, the eye material, which I lost in here. Oh, there it is. All right, so my eye material right here, and with my eye material, if I play around with the emissions, because right now it's pretty low, I'm going to turn the sky. Wow, I'm all over the place. Let's go back to that real quick. I'm going to turn this light back down. I just barely see everything. Click back on my eye material so that I have my eyes here, and I can play around with the emissions and really kind of get some really brightness with it. And you can also turn them down. Okay, so that's pretty much everything I wanted to show you with the materials. So let me go ahead and I'm going to get rid of this emissions completely and close or minimize the material real quick. I'm going to close this. Now I'm going to leave it open. I'm going to select back on the sky dome. Turn this back up. I think this was at 1. It was at 1. So we hit 1. Okay, and now pause for a second. Okay, and in order to let's talk a little bit about the Arnold Renderer. So right now, if we take a look at it, you see we have a lot of graininess happening in here. And the rendering of this image on my computer took about 2 seconds. Yours may be a little bit different depending on your processor and your graphics card and the amount of memory you have on your computer. This right here, this kind of grayish stuff, we can get rid of. We can actually make it better. So right up here next to where we had the little hypershade ball, if I click on the clacker with the gear on it, it's going to bring up the render settings. Here we can change the image size on this common one right here. If you come down here, you can change it to whatever you want. I'm going to leave it at HD 540 for right now because the larger you go, the longer it'll take to render. I'm just going to leave it at default. I'm also going to change this to a PNG, which mine's already at a PNG, but yours may be at an EXR. That's the default. PNG is the, you can do PNG or a JPEG. And then let me go ahead and set all this actually back to, so right here by default, because I was playing around with this again. Let's see, is there a way to set it back to presets? There we go. So I set it back to default. There we go. When I set everything back to default, everything's going to change. You can see EXR here. I'm going to pick that back there. And right in here, this are your defaults, 3, 2, 2. So these are the things that are gone through as the processor or the process goes through and renders the image, and how many times or how many passes it's going to do. Okay, it's at 3, your diffuse, your specular, your transmission. So all those things we kind of played around with over here in the material are things that the renderer is going to do. And we can bump these up, so I'll just bump this up to 4 and 3, 3, 3. Just kind of play around with all these. Okay. And you can see it cleans it up a little bit, but I still have quite a bit in there. Another thing you can do is you could select your progressive renderer. It takes a little bit longer, not a lot, and it doesn't really get rid of a lot of this stuff. And you can play around with these numbers, increase them quite a bit. But remember, every time we change these, and let me go back to default again, but if you take a look at here, this is the number of samples that it's going to run through for your camera, and it'll have a max number for your diffuse samples, a max number for your specular, and a max, and these are multipliers. So if I go back in here and oops, wrong button, there we go back to default settings, see what they're initially set at, and as you start to play with these are going to change these numbers, and it's going to significantly increase the amount of time that it's going to take to render, which it isn't really changing much for me right now. Another choice is hitting the down here and adaptive sampling. Basically, it goes through the process and it keeps looking at the screen until it makes it as clear as possible. And you can set your max number of camera and your adaptive threshold. So if I hit enable, it's going to take significantly longer for this to actually render. But instead of having to kind of guess at what these numbers should be, it's going to run those calculations for you, and it's going to make it as clear a render as possible. But it may take a significant amount of time. Before, even just changing these a little bit, I was rendering somewhere around 2 seconds. And now the render process took me 30 seconds. And again, if I change my max camera AAs and my adaptive thresholds, it will increase the amount of time even more, how many times it passes through. But you can see that all of that starring and the graininess has gone away. So once you're happy with your render, what you can do is you can save it. So I'm going to go here to File. I'm going to do a Save Image right here. And this file will open up, and I'm going to name this Ant Render, and I'm just going to name it 2. Okay? And there we have it. We've gone all the way through the process of adding materials, putting in a sky dome, and setting up a render. That is going to be it for this one. I know it's about 38 minutes, 40 minutes for this video, but again, we kind of talked specifics. We got kind of in some of the details and the reasons why some things work. Yeah, we also did a little bit of adjusted modeling, which added 8 minutes to this entire video. So again, if you have any questions, please put them down in the comments. I will try to get to you as quickly as possible. If you like the video, please like it. And if you are interested in any of the other content that I have, you can check me out at Putting on the Fritz, right here, all the way up there. Putting on the Fritz 3D visualization, and see some of the other things I have. Unreal Engine, building models in Maya to put into Unreal Engine. It's for gaming and things like that. Some Unity stuff. So go ahead, check it out, and like the video. I'll see you next time.